Okay, I put the long hair back on because I want to see if it turns up in the CGs. It usually does. Ooh. Hello, darkness. Humming softly to myself, I lock up the front door of the boutique and turn off the lights. It's been a long day, and while I was lucky enough to book in a couple of new clients earlier, I'm exhausted and in desperate need of food. I head to the back of the store, making my way towards my apartment to get a start on dinner, but before I've made it to the stairs, a noise stops me. Squinting my eyes in concentration, I tilt my head and listen harder. Sounds like someone's in the basement. Deciding to check it out, I quietly follow the shuffling sounds and head down the stairs to the basement, keeping my steps light. We allowed in? It's most likely just Gray setting up for his game night, but he usually stops to say hi when he arrives, and so far I haven't seen him. It occurs to me at the last moment that it might be an intruder, and coming down here wasn't the best idea in the world. But I've come too far to go back now. I wonder if she's kept up with her kickboxing. The door to the basement is open when I approach, and I slip through to find my first guess to be correct. I find only Gray in the basement. He stands with his back to me, his head bowed in concentration as he looks down at whatever is in his hands. Hey, I say quietly, and his head snaps up as he turns, quickly hiding the item behind his back. I narrow my eyes, looking at him suspiciously. Something weird is going on here. What's that? Nothing. I raise an eyebrow at his tone and the way his eyes shift to the side. He swallows guiltily, and I can see that he's been caught off guard. Taking small steps towards him, I try to school my face into a look of innocence, but he doesn't buy it. Show me, I say. His eyes narrow into slits, lips pursing as he shifts on his feet and slowly backs up further. I dart out, trying to reach around him, but he steps to the side, grinning as he blocks my attempt. He backs up into the table, and with nowhere left to go, I lunge again and successfully snatch the item from his hands. Valkii, wait! And when I hold it in front of me, my heart almost stops. It's a photograph. Ew! It's a photograph of me, to be exact, back when I was still in school. I look almost unrecognizable in it, having experimented with different hair dye back in the day, but the biggest difference was in my face. I look so young in the picture, and if I didn't know who the girl was, I would even say innocent. Surely someone who didn't know would never guess that she was the leader of her own gang. Where did you get this? I ask, giving him a hard look, wondering if he recognizes young me. He holds his hands up in front of him defensively before nodding towards a small box on the table behind him. That came in today, Gray explains. He moves aside when I step up to inspect it, glancing at the shipping label, and seeing my name in big, bold letters. I suck in a breath, but before I can lose my head completely, Gray cuts in quickly. Before you flip out, it was an accident. My focus snaps back to him and my skin goes warm. You accidentally went through my stuff. Yes, no, he laughs nervously, running a hand through his hair. I didn't know it was yours. My name is on the label. That's illegal. He rubs the back of his neck, biting down on his bottom lip guiltily. I didn't exactly read it. I was waiting on a delivery and I just assumed that this was it. I brush past him and snatch the open package from the table, all while giving him a withering glare. Like I said, it was an accident. Trust me, I wouldn't have opened it if I'd known. I let out a humph as I glance inside the box, finding a myriad of old things my parents had obviously cleaned up from my childhood room. My favourite soft toy, some notebooks filled with scribbles, some random trinkets, and then my heart lurches in my chest when I see what's sitting on the top of the pile. More photos, including one of Sarah, Nikki, and I with the entire gang. I whip my head towards Gray, gauging his reaction. Has he seen the picture? Does he recognize them as the rival gang that beat up his friend all those years ago? Gray simply shoves his hands in his pockets, giving me an inquisitive look. It doesn't seem like he saw. Releasing a breath of relief, I close the top of the box and hug it to myself protectively. So, he says slowly, do you have a twin sister? I give him a confused look, shaking my head. Huh? No, I'm an only child. But you went to Tailor Academy. Gray circles me and I tense, trying to play the question off as being no big deal. Crap, I guess he did see something in there to know I went to school there. Yeah? I confess. He makes a small sound, coming up to stand directly behind me, his breath tickling my hair. You had some pretty tough gang leaders during the time you would have been there. Were you close to any of them? I freeze like a deer in headlights. That's a loaded question. The wrong answer could get me in trouble. Gangs are nothing but trouble, I say, trying to avoid a direct answer to his question. I knew what sort of activities the gangs were up to, and I was fully aware of the bad consequences that often came with being a part of that world. Why would I want to be a part of that? Gray huffs a laugh, as though he finds the answer amusing. When he stands in front of me, I keep my eyes on him, refusing to let my resolve falter. Not worth your time, were they, princess? He asks, his face turning hard. I shake my head, trying my best to maintain my composure. They were violent, unpredictable, vengeful. If I'd gotten involved then, I'd always worry that my past would come back to haunt me. Lets out a bitter sound, running a thumb over his bottom lip. I see how it is. Ignoring his reaction, I give him an impatient look. Why are you asking me all this anyway? I'm curious, that's all, he says as he backs off. I saw the gangs around quite a lot back in the day. Well, the less I had to interact with them, the better, I declare with finality, and then attempt to sway the subject. But I heard that you DeCapo students had a lot of fights with them back then. He stops and gives me a strange look, and then he clears his throat, his jaw going tense. Did he ever say he was a DeCapo student? Yep. I never told you I went to DeCapo High. My breath sticks in my throat as I hold my gaze, shrugging my shoulders and flicking my hair to appear innocent. Well, I never saw you around Kleiner Academy, so DeCapo is my next best guess. It's a big school, and you always seem to surround yourself with people. He scoffs a little, crossing his arms over his chest and giving me a cynical look. What's that supposed to mean? Never mind, I shake my head, turning to leave. A hand on my arm stops me before I can go, and I turn to find Gray's bright eyes fixed on me intently. Come on, I want to know what you really think of me. I let out a soft sigh. You want to know what I think of you? I step up to him, holding his gaze. I think you're like a wolf, Gray Johnson. You hunt in packs because you feel safer that way, and maybe you are. But because of that, no one gets to know you. Not really, anyway. He raises his eyebrows, and I bite down on my tongue, having already said too much. Clutching the box safely under my arm, I almost turn to leave before remembering what I had come down here for in the first place. Would you mind keeping it down tonight? It's been a long day, and you and your pack have been pretty noisy lately. He leans back against the table, staring at me in contemplation. Sure, no problem. I squint at him, wondering why that was so easy. Usually he has some witty, albeit smart-ass remark waiting in the bank for me. Thanks, I say slowly, deciding I should take it for what it's worth and get the hell out of here. Hey, Valkii? I pause in the doorway, turning back to find Gray still looking at me, his lips tilting into that familiar crooked grin. I think white hair suits you much better. I had white hair back in the day. My stomach lurches, and for a moment I feel like I'm going to be sick. I don't say another word. Oh, she said she had experimented with a lot of dye. So in that picture, she must have had her hair dyed. But her natural hair color is white. I don't say another word. Instead, I dash away before my face can betray my emotions and give everything away. The box needs to be put somewhere safe, away from prying eyes. That was a close call. Yeah, he must have seen something. I don't know. I don't buy it. I feel like he knows. He's just like biding his time. After dinner, I shower and slip into bed, desperately in need of an early night. Can't stop thinking back on the conversation with Gray earlier. It had been such a close call with him seeing those photos. At least now no one will be unknowingly going through them now that the box is safe with me. Still, there's always a possibility he could bring it up later and all hell would break loose. The new life I've been trying so hard to keep up would come crashing down on me. With a sigh, I pull my covers up higher and curl up on my side, trying to relax and get some much-needed sleep. I've almost drifted off completely when a series of muffled shouts startled me, followed by the sound of booming music. Picking my phone up off the nightstand, I glance at the time, 11 o'clock. With an exasperated huff of air, I reach for my phone to type a message to Gray. Can you please keep it down? I'm trying to sleep and have work tomorrow. I groan and plant my face against the pillow, waiting for Gray to check his phone and turn the volume down. Hadn't we already gone over this earlier? The sounds of music and voices continued to drift up through the thin floors of my apartment, and I grit my teeth in annoyance, trying to ignore it. First, he goes through my mail, and now he thinks he and his friends can blast their music and keep me awake all night? The nerve of this guy. Grabbing my pillow, I shove it over my head to block out the noise, but to no avail. Wait a second, did the music just get louder? That's it, I've had enough. With a low growl, I rip back the covers and storm out of my apartment, heading downstairs to the basement. My anger grows the closer I get towards the noise, realizing exactly how loud it is. It'd be a miracle if none of the neighbors show up to complain. Raising a fist to the wooden door, I knock loudly, though I'd be surprised if anyone could hear me over the racket. I knock again, louder this time, but still nothing. With an exasperated sigh, I push open the door. The whole place stinks of smoke, and I scan the room, looking for the cause of all the trouble. Then my eyes land on another familiar face, and my stomach tightens uncomfortably as he comes towards me. It's the creep who came into the boutique the first day Sarah and I were setting everything up. What's this? He asks with a smile, leering down at me. I suddenly feel uncomfortable wearing only pajamas. How about you come in, stay for a while? Leave her alone, Novak. A familiar voice drifts over, and Gray steps forward, nudging the man aside. Wait, what did he just say? Gray's eyes land on me, his face twisted in annoyance. I try to keep myself calm, but the realization of exactly who is standing at his side has shaken me to the core. Ivan Novak, the Hammer. That's why he had seemed so familiar. He's the bastard that cut Sarah 10 years ago. Feel my blood run cold at the sight of him in my own building. What are you doing here? I asked if you could keep the noise down. I gather my wits and say bluntly. Grey's eyes drift downwards, skimming over my attire. In doing so, I currently find myself standing in front of an entire pack of guys in a cropped camisole and lace pajama shorts. Let's talk outside, Grey says hurriedly as he ushers me through the door, ignoring the wolf whistle that pierces the air behind us. Yucky. Kill all of them. He closes the door and I back away from him, putting some distance between us. He raises an eyebrow. Was that Ivan Novak? I question him. You know him? I bite down on my lip, wondering how to phrase this. I just know he was a bad guy, I tell him. Well, don't worry, we can keep him in check. But I'm sure that's not why you came down just now, dressed in. He glances over my attire. That, he says with a slight smug smile. What's wrong? I told you to keep the noise down, I say with a huff. He folds his arms over his chest and stares down at me, his eyes cold. You told me? What are you, my mother? Very funny, I frown at his tone. Keep the noise down or I'll be forced to do something about it. He laughs at that, but there's no warmth in the sound. I don't understand why he's acting this way. And what do you think you're gonna do? You don't get to tell me what to do in my own space, he continues. I pay rent for this basement, fair and square. Why are you being so difficult? I ask, throwing my hands up in front of me. Me? He steps closer, putting a hand on his chest before pointing in my face. You're the one who came stomping down here with your big girl pants on, interfering in my business. I swat his hand away, though that doesn't stop him from going to town on me. You sure like bossing people around, don't you? Might have made a pretty good gang member back in the day after all. What? My mouth drops open as I stare at him. Why would he say something like that? Can you just keep the noise down? I say, growing tired of the argument. Please. No, I don't think I will. Oh my god, kill all of them. Gas the basement. Or like, put some poison in some cookies and be like, oh, I just wanted to say sorry. Here, eat this. Bye. With a shit-eating grin, he walks off, taking the stairs 2 at a time as he heads back to down to the basement. I'm quite frankly perplexed at his response. No. He said no. And then the howling begins once more, shouting like a pack of goddamn animals. I had called him a wolf, and this is how he chooses to repay me for it. My blood boils in my veins at how casually he dismissed my request. He may rent the basement, but this is my building. I'm the one who put my blood, sweat, and tears into making this place what it is. The least I deserve is to be able to get a good night's sleep in my own house. This is war, Grey Jansen. You don't get to mess with me. Was it Jansen? I don't know. Dashing back up to my apartment, I grab the keys for the breaker box and then return to the hallway. Using my phone as a light, I unlock the cover and pull it open, scanning the line of switches for the one with a small label next to it reading basement. With no hesitation, I pull the switch down. In an instant, the booming sound of music disappears, replaced instead by a few alarmed shouts and voices. I quickly lock the box and lean back on the wall next to it, crossing my arms. Now, all I have to do is wait. Barely a minute passes before I hear the basement door being thrown open, and the sound of angry footsteps flying up the staircase towards me. My heart hammers in my chest, adrenaline pumping through me as Grey rounds the corner, primed for murder. He's definitely pissed. He charges towards me, reaching for the keys before I snap them back just in time. Turn it back on, he demands with an irritable expression. No, I won't, I say firmly. I already tried asking you to keep the noise down, but you didn't listen. Give me the keys, Valkii, he growls at me, his breath heavy from just having sprinted up the stairs. I maintain a firm stance, tightening my grip on the keys. He takes in a breath to calm himself, but by the way his nostrils flare, he's positively livid. We were in the middle of an important game. I need the electricity on, he says through gritted teeth, as though it's paining him to be civil right now. Let's think about this first, I say, still refusing to give him what he wants. What are you going to do for me? What do you want? He asks, his eyes hard. I take a deep breath. First, I want an apology for you being a dick just now when I asked you to keep it down. I start to list. Grey's mouth pulls into a thin line. He then sighs. Fine, it was a dick move. I apologize. Can you turn it back on now? Please? Tell you what, I'll turn the power back on. However, if I hear one single howl out of any of you, it won't be back on until morning. I threaten. His jaw tenses, and with no further cards to play, he has no choice but to give in and finally keep the noise down. All right, he bites out. Then he storms his way back down the stairs. I open the box again and flick the switch back up, seeing the glow of light spilling out from beneath the basement door. Hopefully he learned his lesson from that. Yeah, fucker. Get owned. I dash back to my bed and crawl under the covers, but I know I'm not going to be able to sleep straight away. I need to text Sarah and tell her what happened. Hey, are you awake? Barely. What's up? You'll never believe what just happened. Gray was playing music way too loud and refused to turn it down, so I had to shut down his power to get him to listen. No way! Look at you, badass. You've still got it. Guess I do. Also, Ivan Novak seems to be one of his players. Wait, what? I don't know either, but it's super weird. The last thing I want is to make you more uncomfortable. Oh, hell no. You know I don't back down. I'm not scared of him. In fact, I should sleep over tomorrow night. Can't have two dicks hanging around you without protection. I couldn't stop you even if I wanted to. Good girl. We love Sarah in this house. We do. I put my phone back on my nightstand, happy that Sarah will be staying over tomorrow. We'll be prepared for it if things turn out like tonight. And if Jed's there... I kind of ship Jed and Sarah, I'm not going to lie. I pour over my workbench, cutting a strip of green velvet fabric from its roll and settling down the scissors. After I had agreed to Nikki's proposal about making the costumes for the Tailor Academy play, he had sent through a list of what was required. It had been strange talking to Nikki again after so long. I've changed so much from what I used to be, almost 10 years ago. I have to keep reminding myself that this is only a job. It's not like I'm required to suddenly be friends with him again after all this time. I'm not sure I'd even know how to. I glanced at the list once more, making a note in my workbook of the outfits that are required for the various characters. Romeo and Juliet! Of course, yes. Another thing that this route is clearly based off of. Rival gangs. Yeah. Romeo and Juliet is a classic and more than suitable for an Academy production. Nikki had assured me that the costumes for the minor roles had already been taken care of, but they still needed brand new outfits for the main characters, including the star-crossed lovers themselves. The costumes called for medieval gowns, doublets, and breeches. I was going to have my work cut out for me, but the payoff would be worth it. Being able to show off my design skills in the play is a sure way to gain interest in my work, and if all goes as planned, the bookings will follow from there. Snagging the mummy crowd is nothing short of striking a gold mine. When I hear the back door of the shop open, I don't look up. I already know who it is. I can tell as much from the scent of the cologne that drifts towards me. Hey, can we talk? Gray comes up beside me, just as I fold up the fabric and cut the lengths of gold trim to accentuate the gown I'm working on. I'm not in the mood to talk, but I forced myself to look up at him anyway. You're still mad, huh? He asks with a sigh. What do you think, Gray? I cross my arms, trying not to let my temper get the better of me. I would just fall on my knees and thank you for trying to keep me up half the night, especially when I have a ton of work to get through today. I barely kept you up. His mouth curves into a playful grin. I could do so much worse than that. I purse my lips, though he simply chuckles. Look, I'm sorry about last night. I was a jerk. How about you let me take you out for dinner to apologize? I think you're kind of missing the point. I sigh, turning back to my work. Taking me out to dinner isn't really going to solve much. Gray leans back against my workbench and looks down at me. I get the impression that that was exactly the answer he'd been expecting. I was impressed by your little stunt last night. Didn't think you had it in you. There wasn't much else I could have done, I say, trying to keep focus on my work. I pull out a roll of cream satin, struggling with the weight of it, until Gray takes it from my arms and sets it on the workbench. When I turn back to face him again, it's to find that crooked grin of his tilting his lips. What is it? I give him a quizzical look. I'm beginning to realize the sorts of things you're capable of, he says, and though I can't tell why, his voice seems hard. We lock eyes, confusion running through me at the sight of his glacial stare. And then all of a sudden it's gone, as though it had never been there at all. He knows. I feel like he knows. Come to dinner with me, he says again, softer this time. He bends his head towards me, his blonde hair falling into his bright eyes as he does so. This is all going to be... Prediction. This is all going to be some elaborate plan to get back at her. He's like figured it out. If he knows Ivan, then Ivan can tell him who the leader of the gang was, which was Valkii, which was her. So he would know. And it would be weird if he didn't remember her. If you know what I mean? Do you know what I mean? It'd be weird if he didn't remember her. Because she was a part of that day where he got arrested with the knife. But it's weird that he's with Ivan right now. Because Ivan, I'm pretty sure, was the one that planted a knife on him somehow. Because like Jed said, Gray wouldn't have a knife on him, he's not that stupid. But Ivan is, because he had a knife on him and he slashed somebody. Sarah. I just don't understand why they would be together. They were in rival gangs as well. I thought that like you adhere to the rules no matter what, even if you're an ex-gang member. So I don't get it. But I think he knows, and he's playing the long game where he knows and he's going to get back at her, but like he's going to fall in love with her. Right? I could be completely way off, and he doesn't know yet. that's also interesting as well, so. We can talk more. You wanted to get me to know me better, didn't you? I'd be lying if I said I wasn't tempted, but I don't know how up close and personal I should get to the former Phantom, especially when he just pissed me off. I'm a bit too busy for that right now, I say, turning back to my work and hoping he takes the hint. Sadly, he doesn't move an inch. What can I do to change your mind? How about letting me get back to work first, for starters? He looks visibly taken aback by that, but I don't give in. You know what? Fine. If you won't even let me apologize, then I'm not going to force you to hear it. He storms off, the sound of the back door slamming shut behind him. I bite my lip, trying to focus on the fabric in front of me, but I can't stop replaying the conversation in my head. He's cold one second, hot the next. I have no idea what he's thinking. Gray Johnson is a force of nature. Right. Next one. See how fast we're getting through this one compared to the other one? Like, holy crap. As I'm trying to fall asleep, something happens. A thundering crash rings out from somewhere in the building, and then the sound of glass being smashed. I jump out of bed, now wide awake, my heart racing as I follow the sound of shouts and the thud that follows. What the fuck happened? I rush to the living room where Sarah is sleeping. She's already up and confused. What's going on? Sarah asks, blinking sleepily through the dark. I think someone's breaking in, I yell in return. Sprinting down the stairs together, we crash out into the hallway and look around wildly for the source of the commotion. What I see makes my heart drop. The back door to the boutique is flung wide open, the shadowy figures within not even attempting to hide their presence. I know that the smart thing to do would be to call the police and find somewhere safe to wait, but the only thing I can think of is the boutique. All my hard work, my entire life, is right through that door. Without thinking, I push through the door and immediately notice Gray's pale head of hair and Jed's hulking form as they wrestle another man to the ground. Flipping on the light switch, the men blink against the light as they pin the guy down and snap towards me, but my focus is no longer on them. The boutique is trashed. One of the curtains has been torn and an accessory display has been knocked over, the glass shelving laying smashed all over the floor. My heart thinks seeing the mess. What on earth happened here? What the hell is going on? Sarah demands before I can speak. My attention zeroes in on the three men on the ground, one of whom I don't recognize, my blood igniting beneath my skin. Gray jumps to his feet immediately, his hands held out in front of him and his eyes wild. I'm so sorry, Valkii. This is my fault. I should have made sure he didn't drink so much. I'll see him out. Oh, so they're like... Are they like torturing people down in the basement? I'll see him out. Jed hoists the drunken man to his feet without even breaking a sweat and ushers him towards the back door. I don't think he was drunk. Do you think maybe he got free? I'll get the door. Sarah follows behind them, helping Jed get the guy out of the building. I watch them go before turning back to Gray, noticing the small scrape hidden behind his hair on his forehead. He got hurt. The sight of his injury slowly diminishes my anger. What? He brought someone in that ruined your boutique. What the fuck? Sit down, I say. He does as I ask, taking the small stool from behind the counter and sitting down, his head bowed guiltily. We haven't talked since our last argument, and I'd be lying if I said the air between us wasn't uncomfortable. But if I'm being honest, I've had enough of the tension. I find my first aid kit and pull out a couple of supplies, ripping open an antiseptic wipe and leaning in towards him, his knees on either side of me. I really am sorry, you know, he says quietly, hissing when the alcohol from the wipe hits his open wound. Things weren't supposed to get so out of control. I believe you, I say, sighing softly. The damage to the boutique devastates me, but at least nothing was stolen. But this can't happen again, Gray. I trusted you when I let you rent the basement. I move his hand to hold the wipe to his forehead, the fabric staining red as the cut continues to bleed. I grab a small set of bandages to hold the wound together. It won't happen again. He watches me as I patch him up. From now on, I'll ban the guys from drinking while they're here. Okay. I nod solemnly, and he moves his hand when I lean in to place the bandage over the cut, his warm breath tickling my face. My skin tingles where his eyes linger, my heart beating quicker and quicker as I smooth the bandage down to make sure it'll stay in place. Gray takes my hand in his before I can move away, grasping it between his fingers. I am so sorry, Valkii, he whispers, for this and everything else. I drop my gaze between us, suddenly unable to meet his eyes. Warm fingers slip beneath my chin and tilt my face to his, forcing me to look at him. Ugh, what a mess. Jed's voice booms from behind me as footsteps enter the room. I pull my hand away from Gray, stepping back quickly. No thanks to your friend, Sarah bites out as she rounds the corner of the counter and finds the small dustpan and brush I keep there. Here you go, big guy. She hands them over to Jed, raising an eyebrow. Time to clean up. Oh, you don't have to, I start, but Jed holds up a hand to stop me. Yeah, I do. I'm supposed to be looking after the security of this place when everyone's here. I'm sorry I haven't done a very good job of it tonight. He looks so sad that I can't help but feel a bit sorry for him, even though it was my boutique that was trashed. The four of us clean up together, making quick work of it. Because didn't they say they were pinning him down? I mean, I guess you couldn't have a drunk friend that just gets so drunk that you have to, like, pin them down to stop them from being a dumbass? I don't know. I had a friend once. That made me worry about him all night. He's still my friend. But, he made me worry about him all night. Not a whole night, but like for like an hour or so, because he was drunk and he vanished. We were all outside. He just vanished. And I was like worried about him. I'm not gonna lie, I did slap him when I saw him. Because I was that worried. And he was the dumbass. Sarah and I pick through the accessories as the guys clean the glass, putting the merchandise safely on the counter and out of the way. When the floor is clear of glass shards, Jed and Gray stand the shelves back up again, inspecting the damage. I can fix these, Jed says, holding the shredded curtains in his hands, or I can sew some new ones, whichever you'd prefer. You know how to sew? I ask skeptically, and he nods. How did you learn? My mother taught me, he says shyly, rubbing the back of his neck. I got into a few scraps growing up and ended up with more than a few torn clothes. She got tired of mending them, so eventually made me learn to do it myself. Sarah! Marry him. Smart woman, Sarah says with a smile. I like the sound of her. Jed gives a small smile, a red flush showing on his cheeks. I have some spare fabric from when I made these, if you're serious about making new ones, I offer. He nods and seems to brighten at that, obviously feeling guilty for what had happened. Perfect. Would you mind if I used your sewing machine? Maybe he really was drunk. I don't know. Sure, follow me. I locate the fabric for Jed, still dubious about the range of his sewing skills, but impressed that he's willing to give it a go. The four of us head back to the workroom and I help Jed get set up with the sewing machine before leaning back against one of the tables and letting out a breath. Gray comes over beside me, giving me a grim smile. Well, looks like I'm taking you shopping for new shelves tomorrow. I have to cover the expenses. Be like, oh, it's okay, my insurance will cover this. No, I'm not taking it out of my insurance. It's coming out of your pocket. Good. This was your fault. I fold my arms over my chest and purse my lips unhappily. And we'll need to go out early so I can open the store for appointments in the afternoon. Yes, ma'am. He's good at taking orders. I give him a serious look to tell him I'm not joking around. I have a business to run here. And I really don't want to see that drunken idiot back here again. Already taken care of. He pulls his phone from his pocket and starts tapping a message. Unless you'd like to tell him yourself. I give him a hard stare, though he simply chuckles. Don't worry, he won't be back. I lean against the table and give an approving nod. Oh, she's not going to be with someone who beats people up in a basement. I don't think that's what it is. Good. Ow. I look over quickly, seeing Jed covering his thumb with his other hand, while Sarah hovers over him. Oh, are you okay? She pries his hand away, looking over the small wound and tutting quietly. It's just a prick, Jed says, his cheeks turning red. Happens all the time. I'll get something to fix it up, Sarah answers before heading for the first aid kit. That won't be necessary. It's not an injury, Jed grumbles awkwardly. Shut up and let me fetch you a plaster, she fires back stubbornly. Jed averts his eyes from her, not wanting to argue. I watch her in silence, though she seems completely oblivious. When she returns to Jed, I glance at Gray, who gives me an equally confused look. When Sarah starts mothering over someone, I know she has a thing for them. It seems Gray is also able to pick up the vibe between them. You think she'd call the whole hospital just because someone pricked their finger? Gray whispers softly so the two can't hear. Then the two of us chuckle, turning to hide our amusement from Sarah and Jed, who each throw us a scathing look. Our laughter subsides, and I end up leaning in closer to Gray, our arms brushing against each other as we watch our best friends with interest. And I have to admit that this is much nicer, being on talking terms again. I wouldn't quite call us friends, but at least for now, it's just nice. I yawn loudly, stifling it with the back of my hand as I blink my eyes sleepily. Gray nudges me with his shoulder. You should go get some rest, he says, remnants of laughter still dancing in his eyes. We'll kick everyone out and finish cleaning up here. I don't know. After what happened tonight, I'd rather keep an eye on things myself, I say, even though sleep weighs on me heavily. Gray gives me a look, chuckling when all I do is stare back at him sternly. Look at you. You can barely keep your eyes open, Gray teases, twirling a strand of my hair around his finger. I'll look up the place. I promise it'll be safe. I try to give him a firm look, but I'm so tired that I doubt I look very convincing. All right, fine, I say reluctantly, too tired to try and hide the small smile that peeks out. Sweet dreams, he grins. I pull Sarah away from Jed and we head back up to my apartment together, the two of us quiet. When we've returned, I face Sarah with an amused smile on my lips. So, you seem to be getting on with Jed, I say to her, lacing my voice with as much insinuation as I can muster. She makes a sound and puts out her tongue. The mountain man? No, I don't think so. Denial, I see. Why not? He seems nice, I say. And he knows how to sew. That's a bonus. Sarah gives me a distasteful look, her eyes narrowed. Don't even get me started, unless you want me to start talking about you and Gray. What? There's nothing to talk about where that's concerned, I say, a bit more defensive sounding than I'd like. I saw you when Jed and I came back into the boutique, you know. Looked pretty chummy to me, she replies. Words fail me, though before I can even struggle to string together a sentence, she asks. Have you told him who you are yet? No, I say, thinking back on the photos, and you have no idea what you're talking about. Yeah, go to bed then, she sings as she skips back over to the sofa and shuffles beneath her blanket. Then she gives me a suggestive look through the dim light. I hope you dream of Gray. She giggles and I resist the urge to pummel her, instead huffing to myself and heading towards my room to go back to sleep. Why doesn't she sleep in the same bed as you? You have a double. Gray and I are simply acquaintances, and that's that. Sarah's the one who's dreaming if she thinks that anything more will ever come of it. And besides, what kind of relationship, even a friendship, could be built on a lie? So true. How about this one? I stand beside Gray and the set of shelves he's suggesting, looking them over. They're pretty similar. If we can find the same in white, they'll be perfect, I say, and he smiles back at me. Let's keep looking then. We stroll through IKEA together, an enormous furniture warehouse, letting ourselves get distracted by the little showroom set up here and there. The curtains that Jed had sewn for the boutique were perfect. I doubt I could have done a better job myself, much to my surprise. The only thing left to replace now is the shelving. If only we could focus for long enough to find the right one. We enter the expensive-looking kitchen area and I circle the black granite counter, pretending to cook with the show pots and pans while putting on a posh accent. What are you doing? I'm getting like secondhand cringe, girl. This is weird. Why are you doing this? I'm like actually cringing a little bit. Gray sits himself down on, I didn't read that one because I was just so cringy. Sits himself down on one of the stools and pretends to sip from one of the teacups set up on the table, putting out his pinky finger and everything. The two of us giggle at our silly antics and move on to the area with all the beds. There's so many. It just, that came like out of the blue and like nowhere. They don't have that kind of relationship where they're silly with each other like that. So that just came, like, it's not cringy in its, with proper context. But with this context, it's fucking weird because they're not like that with each other. Just because they laughed at their two best friends, like, possibly having the hots for each other, doesn't mean they're, like, suddenly fine to act silly with each other. Am I crazy? There's one fancy bed that looks so soft and plush that I can't stop myself from dropping my handbag and lying back on it, sinking into the feathery comforter. Okay, now that's just normal when you go to a furniture store. Oh my god, this is heaven. I sigh at the softness. Gray ends up joining me, making the mattress sink down with his extra weight. Can we stay here the rest of the day? Gray chuckles, the mattress shaking beneath us as he does so. While I'd love to spend all day in bed with you, I remember you saying something about having appointments this afternoon, he says smoothly. With a groan, I pull out one of the pillows from behind my head and hurl it at him. He laughs again as he catches it between his hands. All I'm saying is, as your friend, I'm reminding you of your responsibilities, he adds, and I wrinkle my nose in thought. He really thinks we're friends. What do you, with an acquaintance, do you go pretend to, like, play house in an IKEA store? I look over at him, his body barely inches away from mine, and suddenly I'm reminded of last night and how close things had gotten. But if you'd rather stay in bed with me, then who am I to stop you? He winks and my mouth drops open at the insinuation. And what would we do in bed? I tease, playing along with him. I have to choose these options, I'm sorry. His eyes widen a little, as though he hadn't expected me to be so bold, but the grin that snakes onto his lips tell me he likes it. Oh, there's so many options, he says, a mischievous glint in his eyes. It all depends on what you like. I lay on my side and face him, smoothing my hand over the covers between us. I can tell he's trying to push me, make me break and blush. But what he doesn't know is, I'm totally prepared to push him right back. So, what do you like? I ask, my lips twisting into a sly smile. I like to take control. He says quietly, his eyes drifting down my body all the way to the toes that curl in my shoes. I like starting slow, taking my time, drawing it out. His eyes lock on mine, challenging me to take it further. I kick off my shoes slowly, one and then the other. Girl, don't strip down in an IKEA. Letting them fall off over the edge. And then I get comfortable, laying back on the pillows and letting my hair splay around me. Gray glances around us quickly, and upon seeing no one around, he pushes himself up on an elbow and leans in closer. Are you trying to get us in trouble? He whispers, his voice a low rasp. Maybe, I tease, running my fingers over my stomach and watching his eyes follow the trail. How much trouble can you be? This is hardly the right time or place to find out, he grits out, his breath heavy and his eyes hard. So, what you're saying is, you really don't want to stay in bed with me. I watch the muscles feather in his jaw, all too aware of his struggle. This is way too much fun. Thinking he's reached his limit, I giggle quietly and push myself up, swinging my legs over the side of the bed. I start to stand until an arm wraps around my waist and pulls me back down against the soft covers, and a surprised yelp escapes me. Ooh. I don't remember giving you permission to leave. Gray breathes as he hovers towards me, using his thumb and forefinger to tilt my chin towards him. What is he doing? Like, his arm is so weird right now. My throat tightens and my heart thumps loudly. I grip my teeth to keep from giving away exactly how disoriented he's making me feel. You think you can push me, Valkii? You have no idea how far I can go. So why don't you show me? I blink up at him, lacing my voice with mock sweetness and watching his nostrils flare wide. If he's not going to back down, then I absolutely refuse to do it first. At least that's what I was telling myself until someone clears their voice loudly somewhere nearby. Did you need help with anything in here? An unfamiliar voice startles me and I scramble to sit upright, adjusting myself as I stand to look over at the salesperson. We're just looking, thanks, I tell her in a hurry. She gives me a knowing look before she disappears and my cheeks flush red with embarrassment. Gray's shoulders shake with laughter and I push him playfully, laughing when he pulls me back down with him again. It takes a little while, but after successfully ceasing my laughter enough to untangle myself from him, we continue browsing through the store. It's just so weird. It's just a really weird development that feels like it shouldn't be happening right now. Between chatting and laughing with each other, it doesn't take long before I've forgotten all about why we came here in the first place. This is the first time I've spent actual time with Gray, and I'm finding myself enjoying his company, probably much more than I should, given this current circumstance. Well, I guess that his personality may be rubbed up on her a bit. I don't know. But despite everything, he makes me smile. His laugh is infectious, and I have to admit, he's easy on the eyes. Though the unfortunate thing is, no matter how hard I try to forget it, my mind always wanders back to the reason I agreed to let him rent my basement in the first place, and why he's currently in my life. I can't stop myself from remembering that night long ago. Blue and red flashing lights, handcuffs, and a knife. I swallow thickly around the lump in my throat, trailing behind him a little more and putting some distance between us. Is this the one? I stroll slowly over to where he stands, examining the shelving. That's it. Exactly the same, I say, forcing my voice to stay bright. Gray looks around, nudging my arm when he spots the same salesperson from earlier watching us. Let's grab a box and get out of here, he says, his tone amused. I think we've overstayed our welcome. Once we've bought the shelf and finally returned to Olympus, Gray immediately goes to assemble it. I think we're missing a piece, Gray announces as he holds the instructions up to his nose, inspecting them thoroughly. I look over the pieces that are splayed out in front of us. There's more than enough to put the shelving together with. Yep, I'm right, as usual. We're missing this piece right here, he continues, pointing at the page. I peek over his shoulder from where he sits on the floor, his long legs bent in front of him. A small smile slips onto my face as I glance at the instructions. Hey, Gray? Move your foot, would you? I say. Huh? Why would I? Oh. He grabs the missing piece from underneath his shoe, giving me a sheepish look. Here it is. We have everything we need, I say with a laugh, attempting to take the instructions from his hands. He scowls a little and pulls them back out of reach, swatting my hand away playfully. I'm in charge of building this thing. You just sit back and do what I say. Ew, no! Gross. I sigh, reluctantly pulling my hand back as he reads over the instructions again, talking out loud. We need to find pieces F and G and connect them together with these screws, and then these little plasticky things. Just out of curiosity, have you ever built anything like this before? I ask, raising an eyebrow. No, I have not, he admits. But I don't see why that matters. I didn't think so, I laugh, prying the instructions from his hands. Just sit here and watch how a pro does it. I'm a Nike pro. With the raise of his eyebrow, he leans back on his hands as I connect the two sides of the shelving in place. Using my small electric drill, I safely secure the screws before adding the next piece. I give Gray a few instructions to keep him from sulking, and it doesn't take long before he's helping me move the completed shelving back into position. Afterwards, I gather the accessories from the counter and arrange them back in place neatly, ready to be sold. With the curtain fixed and the shelving put together, everything's back to normal. Gray and I both lean against the counter, admiring our work. You're pretty handy, aren't you? He glances at me sidelong, as though he expected something else entirely. I've had to be, I say with a shrug. I put this place together on my own, with some help from Sarah. There's no one else around who could have helped you? I pause to look at him, and when he gives me that lopsided grin, I know exactly what he's trying to imply. If you're asking me if I have a boyfriend, then I'm pretty sure you would have seen one coming around by now, don't you? You could have some long-distance thing going on for all I know, he says matter-of-factly, and I bite down the smile that threatens to escape. I don't have a boyfriend, not that it's any of your business. He chuckles, holding his hands up innocently. All right, I'll keep my nose out of it. Silence stretches, and now that he's brought up the topic, I find myself thinking more about it. Well, what about you? What about me? He asks, raising an eyebrow. Do you have... Are you asking me if I have a girlfriend, miss? Not that it's any of your business? My cheeks heat, feeling stupid for having brought it up. I look away quickly, but he only chuckles quietly. Then no, I don't. I never found anyone, well, worth settling down for. An awkward silence stretches, one where I debate whether I should make the next move or just keep my mouth shut. So I suppose there's no one around to mind if you take me out for dinner then, I say at last, deciding I'm not the type to keep my mouth shut after all. I wonder if this changes depending on your choices so far. Gray looks at me in disbelief, and for a moment I worry if he's going to laugh at my forwardness. You serious? He asks. Isn't that what you wanted? Yeah, it was. I mean, it is. He turns, and finally that crooked grin of his slips into place. I still want to take you out. I can't stop myself from returning his smile, even when a small sense of dread slowly worms its way into my stomach. It's a date then, I say, watching as Gray nods in agreement. Yeah, it's a date. This is not going to end well. Alright, I'll see you in the next one.